Stay tuned for Legal Straight Talk.
Is this reality? No, I don't feel okay. I need my kaleidoscope of colors to lead the way. I'm riding in my car and I'm coming on around the bend. It's a chase, this twisted race. I'll be on top again. I'm not gonna let you take me down. It's gonna be the whole 9 yards or nothing.
Welcome to Legal Straight Talk. This is Brett Harrison. This is part 2 with attorney Richard Leff regarding buying a house. Welcome back, Rich. I appreciate you coming back.
Thank you, Brett.
Okay, we didn't get as far as I wanted to last time, but I'm happy we cleared up a lot of the beginning parts before you purchase a house. Let's take it now where now I come to your office. I said, look, I got it. I have a purchase agreement now. They've agreed to accept my initial offer. I need an attorney. Can you help me?
Yes. At this point is where the attorneys actually step into the setup with the purchase. So what happens is the client will come to the attorney and they say, I have an accepted offer on the premises. What happens next? A lot of first-time home buyers are not familiar with the process, so they know they have an accepted offer. They want to move the process along, and they pretty much say to the attorney, what's going to happen next?
Now, an accepted offer is not the final contracts.
Exactly.
Accepted offer means we accept your offer. We won't keep it on the market. What does that actually mean?
Well,
Does that bind anybody?
Usually the house will stay on the market until the contracts are fully executed or fully signed. So once you have fully executed contracts, the listing agent will take the house off the market.
So right now, if I don't have an executed contract, I just have an agreement that says we agreed to sell the house to you without the actual attorney contracts, the house is still being shown?
Some people will still show the house. It depends on the real estate agents. They shouldn't be showing it, but until you have a signed contract by both parties, you do not have that house.
So they could just sell it right from under me?
If somebody comes along and says, hey, we're going to offer $20,000 more for the house, it's not the right thing to do. It's not the ethical thing to do. However, that agent can then say, hey, we're not selling it to you.
So what's the purpose of having that agreement?
It lets the parties agree to what the price is, what any exclusions are, and when it gets to the attorneys have that offer sheet so they know the basic information of what to work off of.
In those exclusions, should it say you give me 30 days to have a contract and that you can't show it?
No. What happens is it's important for a home buyer to have an attorney who's going to get them into contract fast to avoid the problem which you just mentioned. The quicker you're in contract, the less chance a purchaser has of losing that house. So when a client comes to me and they say, I have an accepted offer, one of the first things I want to do is get the process rolling.
Because I always hear, I know I've been in your office, and I've even had some clients that I've referred to you, where they say, is he going to get out the contract fast so they know that I'm a serious buyer and I'm taking it seriously? That's really what you're talking about.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. You know, if you sit on contracts, if a client comes to me on a Monday and I did not speak to the seller's attorney until Thursday or Friday, you never want another weekend going by where people most houses get sold, on the weekends, where more people could come by, look at the house, maybe put in a higher offer. Even though the agent might say, oh, contracts are out or there's an offer, somebody could come along and say, you know what, we really like the house. I'm going to want it, buy it. Here's $20,000 more, sell it to me.
So, and it's probably very typical in practice of real estate law that the client calls almost every, did you hear anything? Did you hear anything?
It's
like an expectant
on a regular
father.
basis. On a regular basis. So how the process works is this. When a client comes to me and I'm representing a purchaser, okay. They come to me, they said, I put an offer in on this house. What's going to happen next?
Why don't you tell me what's going to happen next?
Well, the most important thing is I will make contact with the seller's attorney. The process is that the seller's attorney prepares the contracts of sale. So it's actually the seller's attorney who will send the contracts to the purchaser's attorney.
Will you also contact the real estate agent as well to give them your name, or you don't have to do that?
That's part of the offer sheet. On
Oh,
that
okay.
accepted offer agreement, we'll have the seller's attorney's name, the purchaser's attorney's name, the two agents or the two real estate people involved, the purchase price, the contract deposit, and the exclusions. So that sheet's a very helpful sheet.
Is it a standard sheet?
It's pretty much a standard sheet. It all has the same information. It has different brokers' names on it, but it's pretty much the same sheet. And what happens is, usually when there's an accepted offer, the real estate agent's very excited to get into contract because they want to get their commission. So a lot of times they'll email you the contract, the offer agreement, or fax it to you so you can get the ball rolling.
But that brings me to an interesting point. You said the real estate agent is excited because they want to move this process. But a lot of times real estate agents, and I've seen and I've spoken to clients, they say, well, I told one of the questions that they asked me, the real estate agent, is, do you have an attorney? And they say, oh, they'll say, no, but I know some people. I was thinking about getting an attorney. I'm going to interview some people. They may often say, well, I know of attorneys that know what they're doing. This is the real estate agent that has the financial interest to move the house, to sell the house quicker. They say, can we recommend an attorney for you? What's your feeling? I know that's a slippery slide.
It's a very interesting question. Because a good real estate agent who's very busy and does a lot of work, they have experience with dealing with the real estate attorneys. So they may have a few that they deal with who they know are going to get the job done, who are very good, and will represent the client's interest to the best of their ability. You always want to be careful. There can be situations where a broker continually recommends business to a particular attorney, and maybe they would more likely to get the deal done or overlook some issues that shouldn't be overlooked. I'm not saying it happens, but it could happen.
What's an example of an issue?
A number of issues could come up, whether it's with certificates of occupancies, inspections. Prior to the contract being signed, a home buyer, after an offer is accepted, is going to hire a home inspector or an engineer to go into the house to do an inspection prior to signing the contract of
But
sale.
now that costs money, right?
That does cost money.
What's typically?
It ranges from several $100. It could cost them. But it's something where they have to do. Because once you sign the contracts, you want to know what you're purchasing. If there's problems with the house, you want to know about it.
When you say problems, you're talking about, for example, is there mold? Is the heating system new, old, problems? What other types of termites, maybe?
There's the inspectors these days with this technology are testing everything. A lot of them can go into a house. Besides testing and looking for structural issues, that's the most important thing they want to look for.
Give me some structural
You want to make sure that the top part of the house, I just had a client, he wanted to purchase a house. We sent the engineer in, and the whole second half, or the addition to the house, was actually sagging. And it needed a whole new main beam. They needed to raise the house, put in new footings. If he didn't have an engineer go in, he never would have known that there were structural problems with the house. When problems arise, when you have an engineer's report, that's where the attorney can help you and try to renegotiate the purchase price for you. You don't want to buy a house and have to move in and pay an extra $30,000 to have major problems repaired. So an attorney can say, we did the inspection report, there's major structural issues with this house.
Right.
It's going to cost around $30,000 to do. You could either fix it or you could lower the price of the house.
So the first thing you're going to look at when you get those reports is, first, most importantly, is there structural issues?
You always want to look. You're going to get a report. Look, some reports are 18 pages. They go up to 78, 100 pages, depending on the engineer or the inspector doing the home inspection.
Now, would you recommend, let's say you're purchasing the house and the seller's agent says, I got to find, you tell them, I got to find someone to inspect the house. And a lot of times they'll say, oh, we have a home inspector or an engineer. Do you recommend? That scares me.
It all comes down to the same question when you ask the same question about the attorney. A good, honest real estate agent, and most of them are good and honest, will deal with people who are honest and will tell you the truth in the report.
Well, they have insurance for that. Aren't they obligated? If they're a home inspector or an engineer, I would assume they're a legitimate
Yes, a lot of them do.
Required licenses?
But there's so many disclaimers in their report that lots of luck going after them. In the reports, they'll have pictures of everything from the roof to the basement. Some engineers test, if it's by electrical wires, will test the electromagnetism of how much is there. They test everything these days. So when you do buy that house and you sign that contract, you should know what you're buying. You should know how much, if anything, of financial money you're going to have to put into the house to fix it.
How do you know? Do they tell you this is going to cost approximately $12,000, $6,000? Do they give you some idea?
When the home inspector goes into the house, the purchasers will be with them. So as they're walking through the house, a good home inspector or engineer will walk through, point certain things out, and tell them, you know, this could be fixed. It could cost this amount, and they do tell them, this is what you're looking at.
Now, this is an interesting question, especially here on Long Island. Is there a way, or who has an obligation to say, well, there was prior damage from Hurricane Sandy, there wasn't? Is there an obligation?
There's two different ways to go about it. You could get a $500 credit at closing under the Real Property Disclosure Act, where basically a seller is giving a purchaser $500 credit at the time of closing, and the purchaser is taking the house as is. And once they close on title,
Too bad.
no more liability for the seller. The other way to go, if a seller does not want to give that $500 credit at closing, they could fill out a disclosure form where they have to list anything and everything that's wrong with the house that they have knowledge to. The problem with that, as you just said, that can open up liability for a seller down the road.
Why would I'd give you the $500 if I was the
Almost
seller.
99% of the attorneys have their clients give the $500 credit, and there's no liability on behalf of the seller. It's buyer beware. You have your home inspector, and you're buying the house as is.
Is it still buyer beware if I point blank with my attorney said, I want to know, was there Sandy, any FEMA money given, any type of insurance money given due to...
The seller, that's
You'd
why
say
you
I'm
have
not
an
answering
engineer.
that?
Well, that's why there's no conversations with the seller. It's the real estate agent. If they have knowledge of lead paint, they have to disclose lead
Different.
paint.
Granted, but that's not Sandy.
But if there's other damage or they had a flood in the basement, you know what? It's up to your engineer to find it and for you to find it. It is buyer beware. You're purchasing the house as is. If the property disclosure credit's given at closing, there's no liability on behalf of the seller.
That just seems unfair.
That's the way it is. That's the way it is in New York.
There's nothing that, like, in this day and age of computers, I can't put property on X, Y, and Z street, block, lot number. Was there anything? They have to somewhere keep records that you can look publicly, isn't there?
To see if the house was damaged by floodwater, you could ask the question. A good broker beforehand will ask the other broker, you know, if from the storm, if it's on the water, was the basement flooded, was it damaged, you know,
Right.
what repairs. They could ask it, and if they're honest, they'll tell them, you know, yes, everything was fixed. The house flooded. It was the first time it flooded in 50 years. That's fine. But besides that, they're not under an obligation.
They could also not say, not to my knowledge, which means they're not saying that it was or it wasn't. There's ways to carefully answer that.
There's a way to parse the words to answer somebody, absolutely.
And once you sign the contract, because everything, I guess, is within those, what they call four corners of that contract, any other conversations you have, unless it's added or amended to the contract, you're bound by that.
Absolutely. If it's not specified in the contract, yes, you're bound by the contract.
So it doesn't make a difference if they say we told them, but they did it anyway.
Exactly right. Oral representations outside the contract are not binding. And that's why it's important when you have your home inspection, you have it before you sign the contract. If there are issues with the house in the home inspection that are found, that's the time to start negotiating with the seller and say, I want you to fix A, B, C, and D. And if they agree to it, you actually put it in the contract. So prior to closing of title, they'll make sure those items were fixed. So you have to put it in the contract.
Well, then that goes back to, again, is the attorney, do you have the right real estate attorney?
Absolutely, because a good attorney will be able to call the other attorney up and say, I have this inspection report. We probably have around $20,000 of items that we need to repair when we move into the house. We really want the seller to fix this, this, and this.
So now it's like, let's make a deal. The curtain or the box?
Well, a good seller's attorney will be like, you know what? The client's buying the house as is. They marketed the price for the price at this amount, knowing there are issues, and we're not doing anything.
Now, from a strategic standpoint, will you look at, like I know when you look at the MLS and all that stuff, it says, this house has been on the market or offered on the market since July. June 2000, in 2 years. Will you look at that and say that gives us a little more bargaining power?
Yes and no, because you could have a house that's on there forever, and the reason the house is on there forever, because the
Maybe-
person won't budge. You know, people have been
Or is
asking
it because of these red flags from the engineers?
Well, it could be that, or it could be that there's issues with the house, and people say, hey, we want a credit, and they say, no, we're not giving you anything. So the people are stubborn, they won't negotiate, they won't budge off their price, and that's why it's sitting on the market.
Is that a concern to you? Do you say, well, how long has it been on? Will you look to see how long it's been on the market?
No, that's not
It's
a concern
irrelevant,
for me.
sort of?
For me, it's irrelevant. If the client likes the house and they want the house, they're fully aware of what they're buying. They know what, if anything, is wrong with the house, and they want the house. That's the most important
But a
thing.
lot of people are very much, when they're in the process, they really like a house and they feel like we've been looking forever. So we have to fix this. So we have to fix that. Do you say to them, listen, there's other houses, you ought to think about it. These are serious, whether it's you're going to need a new roof, which could be 10, 20,000, the siding or your heating system.
Every situation is different, and it all depends on the person's expectations. You could fall in love with the house, and you want the house no matter what, even if you know you have to throw $20,000 into it to put a new roof on or to put a new boiler. You like the location of the house, you like the type of the house, and as long as you know that going into the house, your clients are happy. They know what they're getting, they know what they're going to have to put into the house. If I think there's something there that they shouldn't have to pay for, I'll let my clients know, what I think, but I could only advise the clients, and it's the client's ultimate decision. And if they want the house, I'll do everything possible to get them their house and protect their rights throughout the process.
So they're ultimately the chief.
Absolutely.
You're there just to give them the options, and then that's...
I could advise them. I could protect their legal rights, protect their contract deposit throughout the process in case they don't get approved for a loan. But I could only advise them, and they make the ultimate decisions.
Huh. That can be frustrating. When you think that it's such the wrong move, it's such the wrong house. For example, the couple maybe tell you, because you have to understand your client, you get to talk to them, they're not,
It is frustrating because you could do your job and want to protect your client's interests, knowing what can happen down the road, and you could have a client get upset with you because he might think you're being negative on the house, but all you're doing is trying to protect him financially, and sometimes you could lose a client by doing the right thing.
Or would you have them sign, if you really don't believe it's the house they should buy, will you have them sign something that you've explained the following situations? Or is that really not done?
It's not done on the attorney end. If they want the house and that's how much they want to pay for it and they're fully aware of what's wrong with the house, on a particular situation where the one time I lost a client was that situation where the top of the house was sagging, the bottom of the house needed new footings, and I was trying to negotiate the price and I got it down a little bit, but they didn't want to come down further, and the sellers provided an estimate for my client for a certain price of around $15,000 for the repairs. I told my client, I said, you need to get your own estimate from your own person. He didn't understand why. I forced him to do it. So he got somebody else in to get an estimate. The repairs were $36,000, completely off from what the other one and what needed to be done. When it came down to it, I advised him that unless your person is going to fix the house or they're going to reduce the price in that amount, I don't think you should buy the house. It's got major structural damage. He wanted the house, and I guess no matter what, he wanted the house, and he went ahead and purchased it. I didn't represent him, but he's going ahead with the house.
Now, this may be a kind of a weird question, but not meant to be. A lot of people say, why do I have to hire an attorney? I can hire a friend of mine that can go through the contracts. I can't change it anyway. You always hear, it's just a standard form. I can go to Staples and get a closing form, or I can order it online. What is an attorney going to do for me? They're just going to basically say, fine, that's standard. Is that true?
It's not true with real estate contracts. The seller's attorney prepares the real estate contracts. Every real estate contract, a lot of the terminology is the same. There's different various forms to the contracts. However, every attorney attaches his own individualized rider to the contract of sale.
A rider meaning additional?
An addendum or an additional several pages that each attorney draws up on his own.
And the audience should understand, the seller's attorney has no obligation to the buyer.
None. He's looking out for the rights of the sellers, and that contract can be so one-sided in the seller's interest that it's so important that the purchasers have a good attorney to go through the contract and represent their interests and make the appropriate changes as not to jeopardize any of their rights.
Okay. Now let's say you see in the penny saver they say, well, this attorney will do a closing for $399, $699. That scares me a little bit.
Yes and no, and I'll tell you why. You know, my grandmother had a saying that cheap is expensive. You know, if you're buying a house for several $100,000, do you really want to start bargaining on the price for an attorney? If an attorney's that cheap, are they going to put in that much time to the contract? Are they going to be reading the contracts themselves, or are they going to have a paralegal going through the contracts? If everything goes right in a real estate deal and you could go through a deal and you have no issues and you have no problems, wonderful.
But then you're going to be in Kansas.
But that's not the norm these days.
You're going to be in Kansas with Toto.
That's not the norm these
Right.
days. There seems to be an issue with every deal, and an important real estate attorney can actually save a purchaser a lot of money. If you deal with everything beforehand, you have everything spelled out in the contract, you're going to prevent a lot of problems later on when they arise.
Well, we're going to be out of time in about a minute, so I'd like to thank our audience for listening to Legal Straight Talk. You can reach us at Harrison Law Group at our website, hlgny.com, and or you can reach us at 631-465-9797. We welcome any insight or questions that you may have. Thank you. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
I forgot what that was. I wasn't sure if it was that.
Give my regards to Broadway. Remember me to Herald Square. Tell all the gang at 47.
Hi, I'm Jerry Parisi. Welcome to tonight's version of the Long Island Filmmaker Show, now known as the Filmmaker Show.
Remember me to Herald Square.
Hi, I'm Jerry Parisi. Join Tom Neely and Tommy Marr right here on Cablevision Channel 20 each week for an interesting episode of The Long Island View.